In the last 3 seasons, the club from Naples has been through one heck of a crazy ride. This was Napoli in the 2022-23 season. Under head coach Luciano Spalletti, they finally won the Italian Serie A for the first time in 33 years, producing players with incredible potential for the future. But one season later, the fairy tale run from 2022-23 ended up becoming a distant memory. The reality after the last season was that Napoli finished 10th in one of the worst title defenses ever and failed to qualify for the Champions League, Europa League, or even the Europa Conference League. No European football. They'd been through 5 different managers in the space of 2 seasons, but currently in the 2024-25 seasons, things have taken another turnaround again, this time for good. As of the time of recording this, the club sits top of Serie A with a 4-point lead over second place, Inter, and this is all down to managerial shift, accompanied by tactics that are reshaping the league and getting the best out of the current crop of players. So the big question has to be, how good is Napoli this season, and how is the new managerial shift getting the best out of the team? Just before we get into that, see that subscribe button to Kicks with Seb? Hit it if you haven't already. Right, Napoli 2024-25, and the best word to describe this team this season has to be resurgent.
Buonasera, mister.
The 2 men that have made it possible so far, when Aurelio De Laurentiis, Napoli's president, announced the appointment of Antonio Conte as the club's new head coach, it came with mixed reactions. On the one hand, the last 3 appointments since Luciano Spalletti had gone wrong. Rudi Garcia, Walter Mazzari, and Francesco Calzona, none of these 3 managed to make an impact, and if anything, left the club worse than they were. So what's the difference with Antonio Conte then? Well, his pedigree speaks for itself.
He's an expert. That immediately puts Napoli into the position to talk about them for Scudetto favorites.
Really?
Immediately. They're up there with Inter.
Are you, what?
Yes, with Antonio Conte, 1 game a week.
Hold on a second, did I just hear that with Conte, Napoli are going to be Scudetto favorites?
I said, yeah, 2, 3.
This team?
Yes. Have you guys followed the career of Antonio Conte?
To be honest, you can't really blame the guy doubting the initial statements of Napoli being the Scudetto's favorites. And that's based on the season they had prior. But Antonio Conte has come in and so far has changed that immediately.
Antonio Conte has already accused his Napoli players of having a weak mentality after just 1 league game. So what's going on? Let's find out. Conte took over at Napoli after the worst defence of a Serie A title in history, as they finished 10th, 41 points behind champions Inter. A disaster that Conte claims is not a fluke and requires a total...
Only just his first game at the club and he was already calling the players weak. But you see guys, anyone who knows Antonio Conte knows that this man is as honest as they come. It's the same thing that happened at Spurs too.
They don't want to play under pressure. They don't want to play under stress. Yeah, it's easy in this way. And Tottenham's story is this. 20 years that there is the owner and never won something. But why? Only for the fault is only for the club or for every manager that stay here?
He didn't hide the situation or try to be diplomatic. Conte wanted the fans and the supporters to understand the truth, the same he's been doing with Napoli. So how is a team he labeled as weak on the opening day suddenly top of Serie A? To understand the tactics, we need to understand the players he's got playing according to his tactics. Coming into the club, Antonio Conte immediately met a big issue right at his doorstep.
More now on the news. We brought you earlier that Victor Osimhen has told Napoli he wants to leave.
Victor Osimhen, the club's leading top scorer in the Scudetto winning season, had made it clear he wanted to leave. The issue with this request was the release clause surrounding his departure and whether or not Napoli would be able to find a replacement in time. Antonio Conte made it clear he wasn't going to play with players who didn't want to play for the team. And in the end, with time running out, he made a replacement that he's been all too familiar with.
Kvaratskhelia finding Spinazzola, and here is Romelu Lukaku, of course!
Romelu Lukaku. We will get to how Conte has been the only manager to seemingly get the best out of Lukaku on multiple occasions. But the idea behind this is that Conte had found a replacement for the Osimhen situation. Lukaku came in alongside other players that represented a cultural shift. The likes of Scott McTominay, Billy Gilmour, Alessandro Buongiorno, Leonardo Spinazzola, David Neres, Rafa Marin, and in this January transfers window so far, Philip Billing and Simon Scuffet. Notice any pattern about these transfers? They represented a cultural shift. See, in previous seasons seasons, it had become Napoli's custom to enter the transfer market searching for young players with potentially higher resale value. Antonio Conte, however, has a reputation for being a man who knows how to perform a quick fix, and he successfully convinced the board that the solution to the problem at the club was to get experienced individuals who could instead perform the job. With the experience now, and having put that opening day 3-0 defeat to Verona behind him, it was time to test his theory and get to work. And the results that followed revealed a tactical shift from the usual Antonio Conte Italian football we knew that caught everybody off guard. In understanding Antonio Conte's tactics, the first thing to note is how disciplined he is with his structure, or at least that used to be the case, because now Antonio Conte is proving to be flexible and adapting to the situation in front of him. Antonio Conte has ditched his usual 3 at the back system with Napoli, and this says a lot. Think about his title-winning seasons at Chelsea, Inter Milan, and Juventus, and his spells with the Italian national team and the Spurs. It was all with his trusted back 3, but now Conte has decided to go with a back 4. Why? Because he understood the situation in front of him. With this, building out from the back, the team now uses fullbacks instead of wingbacks. We're at this point of the video now, and just in case you missed it earlier, you can still subscribe to Kicks with Seb by clicking that button down below. It's that easy. With the 4 at the back now, it means Napoli now looks to progress up the pitch using central clusters and overloads, instead of building out wide. When the team has possession of the ball, the fluidity and combination play are at times brilliant. Now, with the fullbacks instead of wingbacks, they don't push as high, so the team doesn't get caught out on counters. But for the overloads to work, they still need width out wide. And in this case, Antonio Conte has got a special trick up his sleeve, taking a page off an old playbook, the La Salida La Volpiana. This system is very simple. It means one midfielder drops deep to turn the back 2 into a back 3, meaning to a certain extent, the fullbacks can then push up the pitch. With players like Zambo Anguissa, Stanislav Lobotka, or even Billy Gilmore, Napoli has got players who are very comfortable making these rotations. The next big change had to be the wide men. Usually, the term for wingers coming in deep has been the word inverting, as we've seen with a lot of teams in Europe's top flight this season. But it would be wrong to say Napoli's wide men invert. Instead, they simply come inside and tend to move more centrally than on previous occasions. But that doesn't mean they invert, and there's a reason for that. Inverted wingers and wingers. What's the difference? Using Antonio Conte's system as an example, an inverted winger is a wide player who loves to cut inside and would rather occupy more central positions. The difference in Conte's setup is that the wide men, most times Khvicha Kvaratskhelia and Matteo Politano, play as the game demands. They will come inside on occasion, the same way they might hug the width if the space demands it, or look to come close to play with Romelu Lukaku or off him in that central position. To this end, the wide men under Conte has been described as a mix of everything. Now we know how the team operates, know how the wide men play, how the fullbacks play, how the team defends. It's one thing to have the tactics, another to have the personnel to carry this out. And to this regard, Antonio Conte has a couple of players that he's brought in that have reshaped the team.
Romelu è sicuramente un calciatore che ha margini di miglioramento, perché comunque in alcune situazioni di gioco lui può e deve migliorare.
This was Antonio Conte talking about Romelu Lukaku the first time he worked with him at Inter Milan. For context, Lukaku was coming off the back of a terrible spell at Manchester United, where he'd failed to live up to the expectations. But under Antonio Conte, the Belgian hitman became a menace. He was scoring goals from almost all angles, and now at Napoli, the Belgian forward is repeating the same feat. For Napoli, Lukaku has become more than just the target man he's been through all his career. The numbers are adding up. In 18 Serie A games, he has 7 goals, 6 assists. That's 13 contributions this season, showing his job now is more than just sticking balls into the back of the net. It's about being a team player too. Same with this guy.
Just for that, my nigga, I've been living lawless. Like I can't do no wrong, so I've been up regardless. Hit from the bottom to the top, was barely jogging. But now I'm running shit, I finally hit the target. Iced out hockey, rim my neck cause I be paid.
From not getting proper minutes at Manchester United to becoming the system player at Napoli, Scott McTominay's tireless running combined with his eye for goal makes him a very key part of this Napoli team. He's been a bit of everything this season. His 47 dribbles per 90 this season, with a ratio of 3.11, ranks him in the 92nd percentile in Serie A this season, and his 6 goal contributions rank him in the 82nd percentile. 182 ground deals ranks him in the 84th percentile. Different numbers in different categories.
We've been solely focused on on football. My family did everything for me in terms of helping me travel across England to play football for Manchester United as a young kid, and then I progressed through the age groups to make my debut for the first team and play.
In his words, he's playing for the fans, the coach, and his teammates. It doesn't get any better than that. Recently, the news around Napoli has been about the potential departure of Khvicha Kvaratskhelia. By the time this video comes out, Kvaratskhelia could already be a PSG player, and it'll be interesting to see if Napoli lines up a replacement for the Georgian in the coming days. Losing a player like that might throw a spanner into the works of their title defense, but at this stage of the season, with the manager they've got, you wouldn't put it past Conte to find an experienced replacement to see out the task in bringing back Serie A back into the Armando Maradona Stadium. He's showing that he can replace players the fans thought they couldn't do without. Victor Osimhen is the prime example. Romelu Lukaku has come in and fit like a glove into the current team. And at this point, it's worth noting that Conte would rather work with a system than with a group of individuals. What do you guys think about Napoli this season? Is it a flash in the pan? Inter Milan remains the team to beat in Serie A. Napoli might lose steam and fail to win the league this season? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video as well.